Hell, it's me. I wanted to kind of do a mini first impression review of something I've had for over a year now, and haven't gotten around to talking about it. It's this guy right here. Yeah. And this guy right here is the Wojtysiak. Wojtysiak. My Polish is really really bad, unfortunately. Um, Wojtysiak weapons. Hussar saber. It's a really really cool saber. I have a link below to to their to their store page on Facebook. They should still be able to make these. Last time I checked on there, it was retailed around 500-600 USD, which is really great for a modern reproduction Polish saber, and it's based off of, and insofar as historical data that I've personally looked at and talked to other experts myself, this is actually a super historically authentic sword, and it's based off of a couple examples from what I understand. So let's go ahead, let's pull the sword out, and let's actually look at the blade and talk about that. So pulling it out, we're going to scabbard down, and we're looking at the blade right here. So that guy looks like. It's got, if you notice, it's got a very gorgeous double fuller design going all the way up to what would be effectively the false edge. And it's the same thing on the other side as well. It's kind of the blade right there. It's got a fuller on the back spine, all the way up the back spine, all the way up to the false edge. Looking at the handle, we've got the handle there. It's in this kind of typical Polish Hussar style, L knuckle guard style, complete with a thumb ring. It's very cool looking. That little notch right there, and kind of that bladed looking knuckle guard. It's really cool looking. Anything I could point negatively about this sword? It's very few, because overall this sword's fantastic. It is wieldy. Okay. The grip is comfortable. Feels great. The thumb ring is super natural. It helps give a lot of support, and it's very very nice. What we could do with what we must be nitpicky with the blade. Just kind of looking there where the cross guard starts. You can kind of see it has like an oversweep here, and then it kind of gently curves. It'll gently curve for a little bit, and then it'll kind of, I don't know if you can kind of catch it on the camera here, but then it'll kind of dramatically sweep again, and then gentle curve into kind of that. Irregularities in the curvature, not really a super big deal. The grip, it's got a peen there through the tang, so it's going to really securely keep the grip to the sword, or to the blade, to the grip rather. Not a super awesome finish on this side. Pretty good on this side. If aesthetics are really your thing, like if perfect aesthetics are really your thing, I mean, like the stitching there might be a big problem, but even then it's not like it's obtrusive when you hold it or anything, or it's not like it's obtrusive or anything when you hold it, but pretty good. The spine's got pretty much no distal taper. That's not super great. I mean, you can kind of see where the false edge and the rest of the spine meet. It's kind of a big bulky part right there. not super great, and I think it contributes to kind of the relatively heavy, or I don't say heavy, but really long point of balance from the cross guard. I measured it at about 9 inches. Historically, 9 inches would have been an extreme. They did exist, but from what I understand, that this is rare. Most of them were like in the 5.5 to 7 inch range. Sometimes you get them that far. Once again, that's super duper far. And again, that doesn't result in it being a crowbar. So don't get me wrong, the sword's not a crowbar. It's wieldy. It's definitely wieldy, but it's definitely a lot of blade. You definitely feel a lot of blade that you're trying to sling around. Comparing it to the antique 1796 that I personally have, even that thing, way more wieldy than this. And that has a very, very well-designed distal taper. So, beyond that, as far as the actual sword itself, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Other than those things, it's really, really good. I haven't test cutted with it yet. It's sharp as I got it. I bought it secondhand from a friend of mine who sold it. So, false edge is dull. Edge hasn't really been touched up, so I haven't done any test cutting with it. That'll be soon. So let's go ahead and let's move on to the scabbard. Scabbard it's a little bit awkwardly shaped. You can kind of see the tip here kind of swells. Going back to what I said about the cross guard, I suspect it might be that way for it to fit. Let me get the saber really quick and put it on in to kind of demonstrate that. I mean, I suspect it might just try to fit the shape of the blade, but as you can see when you try to pull it out, it's a little bit weird, and it kind of gives a little bit of a resistance, so that's not super great. When we look at the top here, it's kind of bulky up here, right? And it's kind of square. I don't know if you could see that. Whereas when we get to the edge side, it's rounded. I personally, to me, it would look nicer if this back edge wasn't flat, rounded like the front, rounded in the back, be nice and slim, you know. But not a huge deal. Just an aesthetic complaint. When we look at the saber and the scabbard put together, I mean, the scabbard and the sword. Scabbard looks just a mite too big for it here. Kind of looks appropriate when we look at it through here. It's when we look at the actual spine and then compare it here, it's a little too, in my opinion, a little too thick. Not super great. Yeah, and as I've alluded to, I think the strange or kind of goofy, awkward shape of the scabbard kind of contributes to this not being the super easiest sword to pull out and put back in, unless you oil it. But I mean, we all should be oiling swords, or the swords we own anyway, but you shouldn't have to need to do that to put a sword in and out of the scabbard. The other thing, these fittings here for the little rings, very nice, very cool looking. Very nice, very cool looking. And then the drag right here, very nice, very cool looking. A couple problems with the hardware though. This is on all three of them. So this guy, and this guy right here. All three of them have this exact same problem. If you look very closely, let's go ahead and get this guy right here. If you look very, very closely, the top of that, where it would meet the scabbard, right there, there's an awful lot of space between that top ring, or this top little bar right here, and then the scabbard. Okay, so it's really, really loose fitting, and the only way that they put these on here, if you can kind of see there's a little bit of glue residue. The only thing they did was put glue on here and just hope for the best. And I can tell you that just storing this up, these guys fell. This one's probably a super extreme example. This one's relatively kind of tight, and I think it has to do with kind of the bigger stitching here, which actually the stitching's a really, really good job. As is the overall leather work, and the actual woodwork of the scabbard's not super duper bad. It's just, again, a little too bulky, weird shape. Yeah, contributes to a little bit of a heftier package, sword and scabbard than need be, and I think it really doesn't help with the with the draw and the resheathing too bad. Shape here, if you can see this used to have a round metal piece here to kind of give this portion of the sword kind of like a lobe kind of look to it. Again, just keeping it there, not like I had it stored like this, just stored up somewhere at one point, hung up. This just fell off one day. It was kind of welded a little bit poorly, and it just fell off. So that wasn't super good. And if you can kind of see here, you can tell that this whole piece, this whole metal piece, it's a little bit of thin steel. Again, it's not horrible, but when you have welding that's starting to come apart at the tip there, that's not super great. That looks kind of bad, quite frankly. And like what we had up here before, with the glue just kind of giving way, the glue gave away there. And you'll notice that the scabbard doesn't really have a nice leather finish there. It's just kind of, I mean, quite frankly, half-assed at the end here. It's got a tip that correlates with the actual tip of the blade, although problem, thin metal covering over it. There's a whole lot of this steel kind of poking up, kind of not covering any metal. If you can imagine hitting that really hard on something, it might actually crush that. So not super good. And again, with this end cap here, if you can kind of notice, yep. You can kind of notice this little part here doesn't exactly sit flush with the scabbard. I suspect if they kind of tightened that up a little bit, same thing with this guy right here. If they tighten that guy up a little bit, you might actually not have any problems like that going around with it. So that's not super good. Fittings look cool. Scabbard, a little bulky, not super attractive looking. End cap, not 100% cool. Not really in love with that, but whatever. What I will finally say though is at the end here you'll notice that there are these little bits here that extend from the guard along the blade. Those are known as langets. Okay. A lot of people ask what those are for. It's actually a pretty cool time to kind of help answer that. There are 100 videos that have already answered this, but I'll be one of those. Those, a lot of people are like, oh, those blade catchers, those whatever. Nope, those are to lock the sword actually into the scabbard, is the general consensus anyway. And having said that, like on historical examples, this particular scabbard does get that right, so that's good. It's got those little channels cut out, or shaped out, I should say, in the leather, which help guide those langets in there, okay? Even on the thumb ring side, because the thumb ring's got one too, helps guide them in there, okay? And for being the stitch side, they did a really good job being able to fit that there. And you'll notice that in the guard, if you'll notice a little bit right there, there's an indentation actually in the guard that lets that portion, this little portion of the scabbard mouth, lock into place. They did a very, very good job with that. As a whole unit, probably give it a 6 out of 10, or I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Worth it. Scabbard, 4.5 out of 10. Not stellar, they could do better. Blade, 9 out of 10. Overall, great package, really affordable. If you want one, check them out. Link below. All right, guys. Thanks.